I just need
We're
to
live.
connect to the Zoom.
Okay, great. Well, I can begin. Welcome back to Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. It is still Wednesday, the 14th, which is our youngest son William's 32nd birthday. I'm so proud of him. And I'm just vamping while Kevin gets his slides ready. But I saw Kevin's report in Vermont Biz magazine first, and then in all the other news outlets, having heard Kevin present at the State Workforce Development Board, which was a little different. And then this report that he's going to touch on here was so grim and frustrating that I felt like, whoa, we just need to get Kevin in sooner rather than later as we address creating an economic development bill and a housing bill, that we need to be both looking at where we are and what your recommendations might be, so that we can actually have some impact on some of the data you're going to present to us. So, are you now ready? Did I vamp long enough?
It seems like Zoom is starting to connect, but I'll begin with some remarks before sharing my screen. So the report that you're referring to is the Competitiveness Dashboard, which was recently launched and, to your point, has received quite a bit of attention. And it is getting people talking in a good way, right? Because whenever we can have data-informed conversations around the state, that's a really good place to start, right? Data doesn't necessarily always contain all the answers, but it helps us to ask better questions. So with that, I'll just say a few more words about the dashboard itself. As I mentioned, data help us to understand where we are, how we got here. But one of the points that I always try to make is data is not destiny.
Thank you. And I did actually remember that as I was reading this dashboard.
Great. So that was one of the core principles too behind our economic action plan that we launched about a year ago now. And I have a copy of it here with me. It's also why the Vermont Futures Project created this.
You are right behind us. You're now
Excellent.
filming yourself.
All right. I'll share my screen in just a sec. So this dashboard is a compilation of a range of economic indicators that show where Vermont ranks relative to the region and relative to the nation as a whole, right? When we have economic development conversations, it is important to expand our scope beyond just what's happening in Vermont, but the economy doesn't end at the state border. We have to be attentive to regional and national trends and figure out how to make Vermont competitive in that national context. Rankings in this dashboard are sorted from number 1 representing the highest relative performance, and 50 or 51 representing the lowest relative performance. And the reason why it's 50 or 51 is some of the metrics include DC. So though the data do reveal some strengths, there are far more areas that need urgent attention. The dashboard serves as a basis for comparative analysis too. We can take a look at other states that are ranked ahead of us on indicators that we want to improve on and start to examine what are the policies or strategies or economic development initiatives they are implementing that can perhaps be adapted to a Vermont context. So in that way, use this as a resource for that comparative analysis and research. The dashboard is, to me, a reality check for where Vermont is. It's a call to action.
Yeah.
Where we go.
That's why you're here. It was a call to action.
Where we go as a state from here is a choice. It's one that can and should be informed by data. If ignored, the trend lines will continue and data will become destiny. So with that, I'll share my screen, we'll take a look at the dashboard, and then we can have a conversation about any of the metrics you want to dive into.
And we're just beginning. I mean, we're only in week 2 of the session.
Here we are. So at the top of the dashboard, you'll see the population and housing permits updates. These are the 2 main pillars within our economic action plan, people and places. You'll see that Vermont ranks quite low on both. Population change, number 49 out of 50.
Are you wanting to share your screen?
I thought I did, but I got kicked out of the Zoom. Looks like I'm reconnecting.
But we have it also here if you want to sort of
Great, we can walk through as the Zoom is reconnecting. Did I accidentally get kicked out? There I am. All good now?
Sure.
Perfect, okay. So as I was opening with, the People and Places Framework feature at the top of this dashboard, you can see that Vermont ranks number 49 out of 50 in 2024 for population change. In fact, we were one of 3 states that was estimated to lose population. And with this dashboard, you can see this quick summary. You can also click on each of these tiles and it'll pull up the data so you can do that comparative analysis. As you see here, Vermont was estimated to lose about 215 total people, and that's net population change factoring in births, deaths, in-migration, and out-migration. The other 2 states to have lost population are West Virginia and Mississippi. But this gives you a feel for which states are gaining, which states are staying steady. And again, we're one of 3 states that have lost population.
Because the census, of course, we gained population in 2020. We're delighted that in COVID we gained, but this is just year to year, and this is the census.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we saw inbound migration at high rate during the start of the pandemic, and that has leveled off and now turned negative. So going back up to the top, I mentioned housing permits. This is another indicator that we're featuring at the top, again, part of the economic action plan. And we are number 46 out of 51 in terms of total housing permits. Again, I'll click on the map here so we can examine the data in more detail. And you'll see that we can scroll over any of the states to get an update, a status update on how many housing permits are being issued on a state-by-state basis. Again, a perfect way to use this for comparative analysis. Which states are issuing more permits? What is their policy environment like? How can we learn and adapt accordingly?
So I've seen a correlation between the Montana, North Dakotas, Wyoming, and Vermont's both stagnant or slower population growth and permits, but that's a correlation, not necessarily causation. Have you explored whether or not the restriction of permits and the permitting environments are actually constricting population growth? Or have you jumped to that conclusion?
I haven't done a direct comparative analysis. There does appear to be a correlation, and just from a conceptual perspective, population can only grow to the extent that there's actually space for people to move in, which is housing. And even with stagnant population growth in the state of Vermont, housing needs have increased. This is a byproduct of our aging demographic. As a population ages, housing needs change. Generally, the median household size decreases, right? So that means for the same number of people, more housing is needed. That's a dynamic that's increasing housing demand within the state of Vermont. So we're not even building enough homes for the people who are already here. So let's back up to the indices here. I tried to compile a slate of indices from nationally recognized and referenced sources. And these cover economic momentum, top states for business, economic outlook, talent attraction, regulatory and fiscal freedom, cost of living, tax equality or inequality, and business taxes in particular. The reason why these are featured at the top is because these are composite indices that pull together multiple metrics to determine a ranking. Below, we have distributed into several categories like population, housing, economy, cost of living, the individual data sets that are often pulled into the composite indices, right? So just to highlight that both are available, the composites and the separate metrics.
So if you click on each one, all of that will come up.
Correct. So if I were to click on one of these, it would pull up where that is within the correct category. But within the category itself, you can open up any of these and see that comparative analysis with a little bit more detail too. What I've tried to do for each of the tables is highlight in blue where are the other New England states, so it's easy to find. And then Vermont is labeled there in green.
And all of these are very concerning where we are. The most encouraging one is, I think, the talent attraction. Oh, no, the ITEP, the tax, that's not, right.
Yeah, so that one, Vermont ranks third in the country in terms of tax progressivity. And I'll open that one. We are one of the only states that has a progressive tax system. Only Minnesota and the District of Columbia are ranked ahead of us in this regard. And so in terms of looking at this in totality, if we're doing well there, our attention, our time and resources need to be invested in the other areas where we're farther behind. Correct.
I'm not unwell. I just forgot my regular eyeglasses at home. I've been asked already today.
So.
What else would you like to explore?
Well, I think what are the ones that concern you most? What I guess I would ask of these, if they were so good, having read this report, or is it, I want us to be able to actually have some impact on aspects. I guess one of the questions I'd ask is, which of the areas do you think we have the biggest impact on? How do you see us having that? And to go back to our need of more Vermonters, we need to do something to attract more Vermonters, but it's a little, we also need the housing to house. So I guess that one question I would ask is, of these, where do you think we're gonna have the biggest impact the soonest? And what do you think would affect, the housing and population pieces needing to be effective?
Correct. And I do highlight that population and housing, to me, looking at this big picture, are the lagging indicators. If we take care of some of these other pieces, creating a more business-friendly environment and supporting economic development, then we'll start to see improvements in our population in terms of housing and growing the tax base. The Lightcast Talent Attraction Scorecard, Chair Clarkson, you mentioned we are doing quite well here. When we take a look at the composite elements that make this up, it tells a pretty powerful story. So where Vermont is doing well, why we're ranked so high, is because we've actually attracted a lot of prime working age folks to the state. Inbound migration over the past 3 years has largely been driven by people between the ages of 25 to 44. So that narrative of young people don't want to move to Vermont is, we can dispel that myth with data. We also produce a lot of talented young people through our college and university system, through our CTEs, graduating from our high schools. Our challenge has been retention. So these component scores show that although people and talent, especially young talent, are attracted to Vermont, they need economic opportunities to help them stay, to help them advance in their careers so that we can retain them and that they become the workforce of tomorrow. How do we do that? Well, there's a disconnect, there's a mismatch between the skills that they're acquiring, the opportunities that they're seeking, and what is available. And that's where business growth is a powerful retention mechanism. A lot of our students are leaving after they graduate from UVM, from Middlebury, and going to places like Boston, New York City, DC, Denver, going out to large cities in California. And when we do a comparative analysis of the labor opportunities, there's, again, a mismatch between the skills that they're graduating with, the opportunities they're seeking, and what's available here. Business growth would help to expand that pool of opportunities that better matches their skill sets and what they're looking for. It would also help to improve overall wages too. Business growth, we see a direct correlation between firm size and median wages. So it's both a good retention tool at the individual level for the employers. It's also a good mechanism for growing economic prosperity writ large as that young tax base grows.
Does somebody ask our employers that are on the radar as growing or looking to get to the next stage, what they need, right? Like Veggie should be a good touch point for us to say, what else do you need? What else is a barrier? I certainly talk to Beta and on Logic all the time about housing and just permit reform, so that they can grow in the ways they need. If we're stopping Beta from even expanding at the airport, then we have our answer. So, I just think it would be nice if we asked some of the business leaders who are committed to Vermont because they grew up here or they want to raise their family here, all of the struggles to grow here that they are having. Because I know I try to talk to them, but I think the legislature should be having those conversations.
Sure, and we actually have had our new Commissioner of Economic Development in, and we have asked, what are the key things we need to be doing? So we have to also ask the people that are representing all of these businesses to actually come to us with and this is a direct request to the public. You have business alliances and organizations that represent you. We need to be hearing, and we're asking them in. It's not like they're not here.
Well,
So we have one right behind it, exactly, that will be in a short time doing exactly that, Thomas.
Really love this dashboard. Two things I'm not seeing, but tell me if it's in here, is one, vacancy rates. I want to know how Vermont compares relative to the rest of the country, because I see similarities with some states I hadn't expected, but I'd love to also know if they too have as much demand for housing as we do. And then second, homes per capita. I've heard statistics comparing to Maine, but if there's anything out there for all 50 states. Is that in here or is that on your radar?
Yeah, it's on my radar. This is phase one, so I'll be adding to this dashboard over time. So please keep checking back in, and if there are specific requests for data that would be helpful for your work, please let me know. I'm happy to prioritize that.
Well,
and get it
just to
out.
plug for housingdata.org,
Yeah.
Vermont, VHFA owns the housingdata.org without any Vermont moniker on it. And it has metrics like who lives where they work, which is huge for young people.
And for our
vacancy,
climate. And for our
yeah.
climate.
And rental price, median rental price.
Yeah, it's a fantastic resource that I use quite often.
Yeah.
A lot of the comparative analysis in housingdata.org takes a look at what's happening within Vermont. You can compare town to town, county to county. The value add of this dashboard in particular is to be able to do that cross-state analysis. So again, let me know which metrics you are curious about, and that can be kind of a second and third phase of this dashboard.
Terrific. Any other questions? In these indices and what we can impact, where would you suggest we focus?
Yeah, so I mentioned supporting business growth as a way to improve many of the areas, right? Because these are intersectional topics that we're talking about. We also take a look at, okay, what are the mechanisms for improving the retention of the homegrown talent we already have? The Green Mountain Jobs and Retention Program, you'll hear a bit more from the team right behind me from the chamber. We have examined the parameters of that program and—
I mean, that's our $5,000, that's what.
Correct. And it's targeted towards people graduating with a bachelor's or a master's. Meanwhile, 68% of the entry-level job opportunities in Vermont do not require a bachelor's degree.
Say the percentage again.
68%. Right, so again, this is where there might be a mismatch between how it's currently designed and what is needed by employers. And so if we think about how to reconfigure that in a way that attends to the needs that employers are saying and makes the same level of opportunity available to folks perhaps graduating from CTE or with an associate's degree, we might be able to see improved impact from a program that already exists.
Right, yes, and the ages, the CTE, the associate's degree, absolutely, I thought that was included in that, and it's not.
Easy
So
win.
one easy add for this year to consider. That's
Well,
it.
the counter argument is you have to have data on which of these skill sets are leaving, and which of the skill sets are already retaining themselves in the state. They, like say CTE, maybe the plumbers, because they're local and they're graduating earlier, compared to a bachelor's degree, they're staying. Whereas the associate's, bachelor's, master's, maybe those are the ones who are leaving. So you're trying to affect those that are leaving, not just the whole population.
No, that's a great point, and we can do deeper analysis on an occupational level. But that brings up another great point in terms of talent attraction. We have certain occupation types where there are huge workforce shortages. And this is where taking a look at national data might help us become smarter and more efficient with how we might do relocation marketing. I know that was a topic earlier today. We can overlay several different data sets where perhaps we find locations, places around the country that have a surplus of certain occupations that we have a deficit of, right? That can be one way we target marketing. There are other data layers that we can throw into that analysis as well at a macro level. So Vermont has about 2 open jobs for every 1 job seeker. There are other places in the country where that ratio is 1-to-1, or maybe there are more job seekers than job openings, and we know people are willing to move and relocate for economic opportunity. If they can't find it where they are now, perhaps they're more open to exploring an option like Vermont.
How much on the talent, just to follow up on that talent in migration, how much of that is actually working for companies outside of Vermont? Because in our area, in the Woodstock area, we have a significant in-migration, but most of them who can afford to buy a house in Woodstock or the Woodstock area all are working remotely. So how do you count them in your work?
I don't know, I don't have the exact count, but reading a report from the Department of Financial Regulation when PCheck was leading that, it was an analysis of the relocation grant program that Vermont had in place, and it calculated
That came out of
the return on investment. And by year 2 of somebody relocating to Vermont, they had paid back the grant they received and more.
Yes.
Right. So that's recognizing that even if a remote worker relocating to Vermont isn't taking a Vermont job, it's still a positive economic.
It's a huge revenue boost.
And a job that someone has in one given moment is just one point within someone's career. Right now, we need more people in Vermont. We need more taxpayers in Vermont. And someone coming with a remote job may eventually transition after they make some community connections to working for a Vermont employer. It's also part of a package strategy that I've seen implemented effectively at some of the colleges and universities and hospitals, where perhaps you're recruiting a talented physician, and prior to COVID, when remote work wasn't as prevalent, if their spouse couldn't find a job locally, that family that might be bringing a young kid that would fill up our school too would have to say no. But now, if the physician is a good fit for a job here and their partner can bring a remote job, it's much easier for them to say yes. So creatively leveraging some of these new labor market dynamics to our advantage intentionally can be part of that strategy moving forward.
Thanks. Randy, you had a question.
Just a quick question. Some of the charts that would be linked to these items to be done and those not complete yet, or are these all to be completed?
Sorry, ask that one more time.
Well, in other words, I hit one of the things here that said see the map that would show me the tax foundation, state tax competitiveness, and I don't get anything. I just wonder if that's just an error or is that something still to be done?
That might be the tax foundation site is probably down. So it linked to tax foundation, but no, last time I checked, all of these should be live and active. If it's not, I can get you the underlying data.
Are we just asking that?
I think at the moment we are. I mean, I would go for it, and then I have
Here it is.
another question. Right.
I'll say on the record with Kevin here, because he doesn't know how often I say, I think you are one of our best data people in the state. I appreciate what you do. I don't think we should try and duplicate what you do. I think we should support what you do and make sure it's known and it's platformed and you get all the data you need liberated from the state to do this work. Are there any barriers for the future of your work that you'd like to ask us to remove?
That's a great question.
And please don't leave the state.
happily his parents are still there.
I certainly mentioned that funding is one of the top priorities and concerns for any nonprofit operating in the state right now, especially in a moment when grants can be
Fickle.
a bit uncertain. But to your point, the data availability is certainly something that's top of mind for me. I've noticed with some of this research on education statistics and enrollment, the data sets that I tried to access, which were once available, sometimes are not as available.
Not now, you're kidding.
Or the numbers have changed with no underlying explanation.
Right.
So just that data availability and transparency.
Is that a federal and state problem? Or, I mean, one of the things I asked someone like Matt Barowitz, is beyond the anecdotal, might we see the chilling effect of people feeling privacy concerns with the federal government and not answering the question. And so we lose some integrity of federal data there. And then at the state level, if you're saying AOE is not giving you the data, I am not surprised, but we can address that in education.
Right. So is that with AOE, the transparency piece?
I was just giving one example of spreadsheets that I've downloaded from last year and then again this year, and the numbers didn't quite match up when I look at enrollment statistics year by year, which again, sometimes there have to be corrections made. We see this with federal data too, where there's revisions, right, as new data become available. I think that for a researcher perspective, having transparency or explanation for why some of those numbers.
So there were no explanations for those changes?
Not that I can
Were
find.
you in touch with AOE to find out why?
I didn't have time when putting together this dashboard.
But CC one of us, I'm offering myself. Feel free to CC us when you have those questions, because if that data is presented to us, and we don't know what's changed, then it's really valuable to have your input there.
Yeah, and the changes were minor. The overall trend is still the same. We have fewer kids in our schools now than we used to, right? We need more people. That doesn't change the underlying message or our takeaways that the data are telling us. I just wanted to be able to provide a specific example.
So that's a data example. Your staff at the moment is what size, and your budget is what size?
Yeah, I'm the only full-time staff of the Vermont Futures Project. Our annual budget is about $150,000.
And I just want to say, look at everything he is doing and the requests we have gotten from other people. And I just think that's really important to keep in mind, because I have not gotten this good of data from people we give a lot more money to. So
The return on investment
it's
is
huge.
significant.
Yeah, our donor partners around the state very much believe in that as well. And our business community are crying out for partnership and supporting these types of efforts so that we as a state can continue to make data-informed decisions, whether at the state or local level.
Right, exactly. And you've been involved with the data trust work that the Department of Labor has been overseeing, right?
I get asked to join a lot of data-related conversations.
Yes, no, I know you do.
Help me with CTE this year.
It's critical.
It's yeah.
David.
So in that effect, how would you characterize your relationship with Vermont State, Department of Economic Development, or the Agency of Education? Can you characterize that?
Yeah, so for most of the work to develop this economic action plan, I went in with the core principle that I'm not smart enough to write a whole plan on my own, nor am I stupid enough to try. So partnership was a key part of what brought this to life. All the partners I listed in here, and many of the state agencies that I needed to partner with were very willing and were able to share reports and data when requested, and even recommendations for what the heck we do about it. So I've had a good relationship. Again, I'm just one person, so some of the relationships that I'd like to continue to develop just haven't naturally happened due to capacity and time. They only have 24 hours in a day to spend.
So channeling your work on the action plan and this new competitiveness dashboard, what gives you, I mean, it's all concerning. What is most actionable of this and what would you suggest?
Yeah, so we can go through some of the recommendations. Again, this was published last year. I think that
So much of it is still.
yeah, we touched on intentional efforts to recruit more people to Vermont, and that can be done with data. You've heard me say Vermont needs more people need Vermont. We can quantify that second piece in multiple ways, whether people need Vermont for labor market opportunities. We've also seen some people move to Vermont because it's more affordable relative to where they're coming from, right? So we have to understand what are the points of friction or what are the positives that someone might choose Vermont for. We can certainly take a look at climate data as a reason why more people might need Vermont, and we've seen values-based migration as well. So when we start to stack these data layers together, we have a much more intentional and targeted strategy for how to do relocation.
And those two pieces are driving a lot of the in-migration in my neck of the woods. I already know of several climate refugees, all of them are deep-pocketed, and all of it. So some of this competitiveness, there's a disconnect altogether in that the demand for our housing and our housing prices are so high.
Can I just say, as someone whose scholarly work is in this area, there's a difference between a climate refugee and a climate immigrant. Someone who can afford a very expensive home to make a choice to leave is very different than the people who are semi-homeless right now in Vermont because their home has been flooded and we have not provided a new place for them to live.
That is fair. That is fair. I'll change it, but my point is that the disconnect is our housing prices are escalating at a rate that is unaffordable for many Vermonters on Vermont incomes.
And climate immigrants pull up the ladder on climate refugees when they don't want housing built next to them, which is Kevin's other body of work.
That is
very
also
valuable.
I guess my point is Vermont is in demand.
Yes.
For whatever reason. The values of our homes reflect that.
Yes,
and yet,
add to that.
all these other things are.
Yeah. So one of the points here in the dashboard, CNBC Top States for Business, there are components to it, and we rank #1 for quality of life. This is something that people seek out. Vermont is in demand. And based on some of these factors that we've talked about, we can anticipate that demand will persist and may even increase in the coming years. Inherently, that is a good thing for the state of Vermont, right? That is a position of strength to build from. We want people to desire to be in Vermont. Yes, that demand does put pressure on the housing market because there's an imbalance between the demand for being here and the supply of housing that enables that to happen. Basic economics, right? So with that, we have this opportunity to step up and meet that demand that would increase the population, increase the tax base, improve affordability, that would meet the moment for our employers who are asking for more robust workforce recruitment efforts. And this is, to me, why I'm optimistic. People ask me quite often when they take a look at this, oh, it's a lot of bad news, doom and gloom. What gives you hope? The demand for Vermont is what gives me hope. And it might not last forever if we don't step up to the challenge. Right. But it's a much better place to be in as a state than the opposite, which is if prices were tanking because everyone kept moving out and no one wanted to be here, that's a bleak future.
Yeah. Thanks. David, did I see that you had a question?
No, I'm wondering, because we only have 5 minutes left,
Yeah.
I'm conscious.
Well, we're gonna sort of morph into,
Access.
Megan, his umbrella, the chamber is gonna take over.
So I'm just wondering if you're leading to a set of recommendations, to, how do we remove constraints or, what if we have limited influence, but what can we influence?
Right, which is sort of what, building on the question I tried to ask earlier.
Sure.
Thank you, David.
Again, there's a lot of recommendations in here. I'd start with this and make sure your colleagues not only have a copy.
It's
but
right here.
They read it as well. We have touched on, the regulatory environment, how difficult it can be to operate a business, to scale, to build housing. And I would just say that there are ways to actually quantify that impact. We could do a research study that examines what is the cost or what has been the cost of our existing regulatory environment and what is the potential gain from making some adjustments that are aligned with the outcomes that we all say we want, right? And that would be a principle that I ask you to consider and apply, which is what is the stated outcome that we all are talking about, whether it's more houses or increasing the population. What are the conditions now, and is leadership in this moment barrier deconstruction? Do we need to add more that's new or help to get things out of the way? I have been reading about this behavioral economics concept where making the default aligned with the desired outcome leads to much better results. And the classic example is a new employee who begins a job, if they are automatically enrolled in contributions to a retirement account, their long-term financial outcomes are significantly better than if that employee is asked to apply, go through the process of doing the paperwork to defer part of their wages to contribute to retirement. So just by shifting the default and saying, okay, you're automatically enrolled. If you want to opt out, that's okay, right? We're not taking away personal choice or freedom, but we're aligning the default to a desired outcome.
And the desired outcome here in Vermont, and it's sort of anchored here.
So we can apply that same thinking to how we talk about housing, how we talk about economic development. The housing example, right? If housing is a human right, then it should be right to build housing. You've heard me say that before, but the process right now is someone who wants to create new housing in a community has to go through a laborious process, time-consuming process, costly process to get permission to do the thing we say we want them to do. So how do we reconfigure the default to align with the stated outcome? And this is where, again, data is really helpful in helping us understand the rate of progress, the scale of action that's needed. There's a housing needs assessment that says how many units we need. So start to embed those data in how we measure and create policies too.
Do you agree with that number? The end state, housing end state?
Yes, I do.
Which number? The need for
How many-
7,500 a year? Or the instant?
We added earlier.
If I could,
One last thing, and then we'll move to Megan.
well, I'm so glad to hear another senator bring up the vacancy rate, so I don't have to. And there's gonna be an interesting market pushback because I can see where housing is being built in large quantities. Their vacancy rate's gonna loosen. I have staked my career on that, meaning rent actually decreases or stabilizes,
Yes.
which the market is gonna, like those developers are gonna say, well, we don't wanna keep building more for not as much money. So we also then need to be paying attention to what policies we need to drive into places that have very tight vacancy rates, likely outside of Chittenden County.
Like the Upper Valley, which is less than 1%.
Right. So I think we're climbing toward 2% vacancy,
Well, that's good. That's
Chittenden
better
County.
than we are.
which is like great. And now we hear, oh, we're not gonna get as much rent. It's like, good, that was the whole point of what we did.
Exactly. And a healthy vacancy rate. is
Right, so we have to pay attention.
5%? Yeah, great. Terrific. Tom, you have
No,
no.
just great work. I always love the literary cut and shoot.
Kevin, it's wonderful. Thank you very much. It really gives us marching orders. I wish we had,
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. Again, I encourage you to click around, examine the data sets. If you have any questions, let me know.
we'll
If I
we'll
can
get
be
back.
a partner to bring new data into this dashboard that would be helpful for you, again, happy to do that.
Great,
It's a public resource, share with your colleagues as well.
thank you. And just quickly on your budget, that is raised by the chamber. How much of that do we raise through the budget? And how much
It
is
is
through?
entirely supported
It's
by
all supported.
donations,
By
mostly from the
donations.
business community and some individuals that really believe in the mission.
Yes. So this is, your efforts are not state funded, state supported and, but not funded. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you are always, give us lots to think about, which we appreciate. And are challenged by. So both of which I try and appreciate how much you challenge us.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you so much. And now we are going to pivot to Megan, to the chamber, and address what they're, following up on this, what their economic development priorities are for the year, for this session. Kevin, thank you so much. And your full-time, you have a part-time, you're the only full-time, but you have part-time, you're part-time,
Administrative support from my wonderful colleagues at the chamber
and your office is there. Yeah.
and colleagueship too. They support me quite a bit emotionally.
Well, there's Megan comes right.
And, we got Amy's Jeremy with us.
Oh, okay, you can pull on a chair and you
We're
can.
gonna pull up.
Kevin, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And Kevin, would you kind of, if you felt comfortable leaving your cell with your Vera,
So,
that would be great, yeah. Oh my God, all three.
Oh my gosh, we're all here. We're all here. All friendly smile.
Great,
All right, I will, kick us off. For the
Right.
record, I am the president of the Vermont Chamber of Commerce. I thought, after Kevin, it might be helpful to provide, we'll call it a 50,000 foot view of the chamber. Just so you understand how the Futures Project as a C3 interacts with the chamber and how Kevin frames his thinking as a C3 versus what we can do as a C6. So here's the look. So the Vermont Futures Project.
on a regular basis. She's still
Oh,
here.
wow. Gosh, there truly are not enough cough drops in the world when you have pneumonia, so I'm not contagious, everyone.
But she's getting better every day. It's an improvement.
I feel your pain. I had pneumonia last year.
It's
No problem.
gonna be like 6 weeks of this, so I don't know how many I can eat.
So we assume that the Futures Project, the action, the call to action, and this most recent data is informing what your priorities are.
Absolutely. So the Futures Project, it's structured as a 501c3, which means that its role is to provide independent, nonpartisan research and long-term economic analysis, which is what you see, know, and love that Kevin provides. But by design, as a C3, it does not take positions on specific policy proposals or advocate for legislative outcomes, which is why that frames how Kevin answers your questions and you're asking specific policy, just so you're aware of why he might
So
answer.
you make the recommendations, he provides the data that informs what becomes a recommendation.
Yeah, so think of it as a pipeline. The Futures Project produces the data, long-term economic framework, gets a lot of buy-in throughout the state. We translate that based on that research into policy recommendations based on the data, and then also our interactions with the business community as well. So planning flows into policy, but the functions remain very much distinct. So just a little caveat there as we tip off the time here. So I also want to thank all the members of the committee for your engagement with the business community over the past year. And as many of you around the table have attended the Solution Summit, also our industry policy retreats for manufacturing, for tourism and hospitality. Those were important conversations that were solutions-driven conversations, and employers from across the state certainly noticed and appreciated the participation. So at the chamber, as we've talked about our pipeline right now, we've been very intentional about shifting from a reactive posture to a proactive one, which is what led us here today to talk about some of our recommendations that we have. So rather than responding issue by issue, we've been engaging with employers over the past year about what they need to invest, grow, and stay competitive here in Vermont. So pairing that insight with the rigorous economic analysis that Kevin is doing. So when you put those two factors together, though, I think an important takeaway for this committee is that the message is very consistent. The Business Climate Survey shows that workforce availability, housing supply, regulatory complexity, and cost pressures, they're not isolated concerns, and they're all interconnected constraints. And I think that's really the story that's woven with all of Kevin's data, that everything is interconnected. I think one of the important conclusions that we have from the data is that Vermont's core workforce challenge is not participation, it's availability. Our working age population is flat to declining while peer states are growing. Even strong participation among older workers cannot offset the retirements that we're seeing. And so that reality does require a different policy lens, one that Megan will take a deeper dive into very specific recommendations, but looking at retention, attraction, and productivity, that's kind of the lens that we're bringing here. Housing is also central to that equation, one that you're very familiar with, so I won't spend a lot of time there, but employer central to us, and the data confirms this, that housing availability is now a primary restraint on hiring, expansion, and investment. Right. So it all comes back to housing. At the same time, at the same time, I'd say Vermont's cost structure leaves businesses with little margin for uncertainty. So higher costs in housing, healthcare, and compliance means that delays, unclear sequencing, and unpredictable timelines can quickly derail otherwise viable projects in our state. So key takeaway there is predictability matters. And before
Some of that is us, and some of that at the moment is not.
correct. But what I want to leave with you before Megan takes over some policy recommendations is that we're seeing some concerning signals at the sector level. When we're looking at tourism and manufacturing in particular, they play an outsized role in Vermont's economy because they're export oriented. They bring in dollars, outside dollars into the state, and not all GDP growth is equal in the small state economy. Tourism is facing real headwinds tied to workforce and housing constraints. And manufacturing, I would say, is even more concerning for our state. In a single year, Vermont experienced a kind of manufacturing decline that long-term projections expected to occur over an entire decade. So we're accelerating our projected decline in manufacturing in Vermont. So it's an outsized decline that we're seeing. So I would say
Decline. So it's decline closing businesses, decline is not producing less. Is it producing less or is it closing businesses?
It can be both, because it's the overall contribution to Vermont's GDP. So it's their economic influence that they have is declining at a greater rate than anticipated. And I think for a number of reasons.
Can you put that in numbers?
We do have that in numbers, so I'll have to follow up with you, because I don't have it in front of me, but I know we prepared.
Megan Sullivan, Vice President of Government Affairs for the Vermont Chamber of Commerce. I would go back, I think it was supposed to decline 1.2% over a decade, and we did that in 20 years. So overachieving in ways we don't want to be doing.
Okay, so I think that's a good segue over to Megan, who will provide some targeted, and Jeremy, who are going to provide some targeted, pragmatic policy interventions that are designed to improve predictability, strengthen our workforce alignment, and support some long-term investment without compromising Vermont's environmental, health, or safety standards. So we're keeping all of those things top of mind. So Megan and Jeremy, I'll pass it on to you.
Great, thanks. Thank you. So when we're coming up with our policy recommendations on economic development, we're looking at the competitiveness dashboard, looking at the economic action plan as sort of our guiding document, and also the input that we got from businesses at our various policy events that we had this fall. And also understanding the state is in a tough year, right? Coming in and saying, well, we're going to need $50 million to do this. Like, that's not reasonable this year. So saying, what can we do that's going to make a difference that is reasonable and attainable given our budgetary constraints right now. The first piece we have in here is about regulatory predictability and streamlined permitting. Obviously, this is something we talk about a lot on the housing front, but it is significant on running the business as well. The number of agencies that you have to go to get various permits, the number of agencies that you have to check in with on a regular basis, that you have to do reporting with. It can be challenging for businesses, especially as they're scaling, to understand, what am I supposed to have in place? What am I supposed to be doing? When am I getting things right? What happens if I get things wrong? And I think as a state, having been a former state employee, things can be very siloed. You don't, one agency is doing something, another agency is doing something similar. It can be challenging to know what is the overall scope of the regulatory world that various types of businesses are in. And so our first recommendation is really about trying to get our hands around that, having agencies work together to outline what are all of the permits that businesses are required? What are all the reporting that a business is required? Is there duplication that's happening here? That maybe we say, we don't need two agencies checking the same box and charging a fee every time they do it. So doing that communication is something that we're recommending happens in order to probably come up with some policy recommendations next year more specific to our now what we do.
So is that a task force that identifies all those duplications? I'm sorry, my face. No, I know. I'm just asking, how do we actually get to the point of specifically aligning? I mean, how do we get to the
I don't know if it's a task force or it is tasking agencies.
Yes, I'm happy to just
an interagency
moving forward is the question.
That said, we have something we're working on to share, which is that we are looking to get funding through, we're talking to organizations about grants, to work with an organization called Memo, who specializes, what's that?
Strata Acumen. His name is Memo.
His name is Memo.
His name is Memo.
All right, I'm here for it. But what they do is specializes going into a state and looking at regulation.
Oh, you mentioned it, yeah.
Yeah, looking at regulation and understanding, deep dive, what does the law say? What do the rules say, which sometimes is significantly more than what the law says? Where are there duplications? And it's not an anti-regulatory review, but it's let's do regulation in a smart way. And they also quantify, what is the cost to all of these things? Not only the cost to the business, but the cost that it's taking out of the economy.
So that work would be critically important for us to be able to act on. Tom, you had something.
I completely support this direction, but I'm reading about the establishing one or more permitting ombudsman's positions.
Yes.
What, I'm not against that,
Yeah.
but what I would love to know, if this is on your radar or as you consult with other chambers across the country, I'm hearing more and more about agentic AI being used for permitting reform and streamlining and asking and serving as a resource to answer just these questions. I'm not against this. I'm not against it, but I do see a real opportunity for turning one of those tools on our permitting system to help both people that need to apply and also us better understanding where the bottlenecks are. I don't know if that's on your.
I mean, I'm open to technology making our lives easier, certainly. So, within the framework of let's make sure it's done right.
You were in motion on hiring Memo.
We are in motion on fundraising, so we can hire Mr. Memo.
And the cost of that at the moment that you're looking at is,
$125,000.
and that would provide us information, not in this session probably, but for next session.
It takes 6 to 12 months for the study to be completed because it's a thorough review of the entire regulatory environment in the state. And then it also provides a focus on 5 areas. So we've definitely identified housing as an example of a focus area that we would
Do we
look
have any history of their results elsewhere?
Yeah, so there are a number of states that have used a cost regulation study to look at where can we simplify things, where is there duplication.
Let's be clear.
Yes, that is a great way to.
I believe the governor of Colorado had a photo op event where he after they got the report back, took a chainsaw to like 180 pages of duplicative regulation as a,
Just verification question, and let's keep moving.
Yeah.
I really encourage us all to treat permitting like a outside of session priority for us as well. I encourage us to have the Agency of Natural Resources in because it was constituents who alerted me, a business, a farm, that their AI permitting navigation system went haywire and spit out to a large number of those who have existing permits that they needed new permits. It caused, I mean, if you can imagine,
Chaos.
it caused chaos, heartache, lost sleep. Because I had just finished asking them what happened to that nice young man who was supposed to be like the A&R permit navigator, and they switched out people for AI, and then they are looking at switching out this AI for another technology, and this is our problem. This is a problem. This is businesses and developers being told, just deal with our system.
The memo results are certainly going to really inform a specific.
Which memo? You mean this acumen?
Mr. Memo.
But we cannot wait for that. That shouldn't be us waiting. That we need to be more proactive as a committee on addressing this issue.
I would say the ombudsman position that we are talking about here is not, part of it is definitely to say, okay, these are the things that you're going to need, okay, manufacturer, having that person who understands the ecosystem of permitting, but also can say, okay, DEC, okay, Verb. I'm not understanding your response here. Someone who's looking out for the opportunity and the development who can, I think when we put these positions in the agency of enforcement, it becomes challenging to have that, you're here to help the applicant. You're here to ensure that the application is done correctly. Having that person in the agency that is there to help the applicant, that's part of our point here is that we want someone who's an expert in these things, but where they're housed matters.
Yes.
And coming to us and saying there are too many problems with this permit.
Okay, so next up, talking in this to that relocation marketing, but also current location marketing. You all do some great things, and we will share with you some things that we've put together for our members that say, here are 10 things that the legislature did this year that you can use as recruitment and retention tools. And that is done by our government affairs, non-marketing communications brain. Imagine if we had people with marketing communications brains who are thinking about this and putting it together in a way that provides information to the folks who are dealing with our businesses on a regular basis, to say, here are the tools that you can be using when you are trying to get applicants to move here or you are trying to get people to stay here. And it's the tools from the workforce development programs, the housing programs, the loan repayment programs, the childcare programs. These are all opportunities to reframe for our businesses how they can keep and entice people here. The military pension tax exemption, our business is aware of that. So when they're recruiting people, they can put that in their recruitment. And part of this is we just need to do a better job of not putting something 4 pages down on the website, but packaging it. I think the Office of Workforce Development is a good place, given their work around this and some committees that are forming. And I will be the first to say, when the legislation to create that office was going through, I was the one saying, oh great, we're moving deck chairs on the Titanic. We've got another layer of bureaucracy. I have done a 180 on that. I met with Sabina and Drake, and they are down in the hole that was hit by the iceberg, trying to get this ship back on track. And I think the work that that office is doing is a good place for this because they are nimble and they are thinking ahead about these challenges and about recruitment and retention and framing and not just having meetings, but working.
I wonder if also there's a really distinct linkage to the tourism office. In terms of, because the marketing that they do and the analysis of that marketing is, I think, so critical for workforce development.
Yeah, I mean, they own.
That's a skill set that I'm not sure is there in
Right.
workforce development area.
They own our brand. They own how to do marketing in the state. So we would love to have them continue to do this work on relocation marketing and work with employers and be part of that conversation of how are we really selling the work that happens every year here in a way that makes a difference on some of these metrics that are alarming. We're moving fast. Moving fast. The next piece is about the Green Mountain Jobs Program. And we have a young person on our staff that we're excited is in Vermont. I'm going to let Jeremy talk about our ideas here.
Jeremy Little, Policy and Outreach Associate with the Vermont Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for having us. Yeah, as a young person, the Green Mountain Jobs and Retention Program was actually first instituted in the year that I graduated from my undergraduate at St. Michael's College.
Right.
So, I really tried, but unfortunately I was actually away for a year in Spain, so I ended up coming back and then I didn't qualify. But during that time, I actually had a couple of friends reach out to me and ask me about the program because they knew that I was sometimes hipping with it with the legislative programs. But they applied for it, they got that program, and they are still in Vermont to this day. They came from all sorts of places like New Hampshire, Massachusetts. So it's been great for retaining college students outside of just like having them here for college and then having them leave once they graduate. And so it really shows that employers were able to use this as a tool. Like they recruited all of my schools, nonprofits, like towns. They used the schools to recruit my peers into their jobs, into their empty positions. And that's really what we need throughout the state. Keeping young people in the state is going to be a big step towards fixing this workforce gap that we're seeing widening over the next 5 years. So not only is this gap happening amongst bachelor's and master's graduates, which is what the program currently applies to, but it's happening throughout the state in all sectors, especially the manufacturing industry, the tourism industry that Amy and Megan were speaking towards. And 68% of jobs in Vermont don't actually require a bachelor's and master's degree. So one thing that we're asking for this year is if you're willing, is to consider expanding this retention program to not just bachelor's and master's degrees, but to associate's degrees and professional certifications. So that more employers across the entire sector, from chefs to engineering technicians, can really use these to fill those positions.
Can I say something on that quickly?
Yeah.
I feel like we are also, through our CTE work and other things, trying to pull back that need to have a degree requirement on everything.
Right.
So I think that fits really well with our mission to not require that young people pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to feel like they need somebody that they don't to take a job in the state.
I think we've been focused on that for a while, and I think that's a good catch, and but there we are, we had to have a couple of years of this in gear, I appreciate that how we can expand it. And
Just one last little part of this as well.
do you have a recommendation on the amount we ought to, because I believe they're out of money and they need more infusion of money, so the question is, what's the ask on that financially?
I think 1.5 million was appropriated last year, so continuation of that funding.
And has it been fully subscribed?
So it had not been when we were really starting to talk about this in October, but since then, it's, the money isn't gone, but it's been allocated, right? Because you earn it over time.
Right. Okay.
So our next piece is.
Is it targeted at all, or is it just a kind of a blanket? You have bachelor's, associates, CTE type certificates in general? Or
It is
targeted
not.
to what we need?
It's not targeted, but I would say if this to me is one of those programs, that is, I would call it a specific employer-focused recruitment tool, as opposed to this is the employee tool. I love hearing that young people find it a huge relief to get, that $5,000 means you can get a house that much earlier. That is impactful, but we have employers who have needs in every sector, right? We have members in every industry, and there isn't an industry that's like, no, we're good. So when we say, targeting at someone who has needs, right now, the need is,
Let me reframe it, prioritize. Are we going to prioritize this at all? That we're, I don't know, 50% down in nursing, and we're 4% down in another occupation. We can't prioritize it at all and say, this is where we're gonna focus.
It hasn't been, and I think we'd be open to that conversation, but my preference is, at this point would be to allow the program to be used as a general recruitment tool.
Yeah, and I think it would be great to hear from the program what areas they're being recruited into.
Yeah, and I think they're part of the reflection on that too is, as we've been talking about this program, businesses, legislators, most people don't know about it. It's a pretty well-kept secret.
Well, UVM doesn't exactly have huge marketing.
No, I know. And so that goes back to that, how are we marketing the tools that are put in place?
And I think that's a huge question, which
all right, so number 4, strengthening hospitality, visitor economy workforce. So this again, we're getting back into where are we at on this workforce pipeline? And I think really focusing on doing some of this data-informed alignment. Where are the jobs? Where is the training, right? Some of these jobs are much more technical, and we need to know where that training is for them, so that especially our hospitality, visitor economy, can have a handle. Because right now, what we're hearing is a real struggle to find employees, which everyone is having, but specifically where that training can help them meet the demand. And it's varied, right? A large hotel needs an engineer, and a maintenance technician needs people in the training.
It's a chef. I'm in conversation about starting a new culinary institute with CCB and others. And so we desperately need a culinary institute.
Yeah.
We have no pipeline for that anymore. Other than our CTE kids go through and then boom. So on that front,
the data on that front of where are we at with the positions that are needed. And the Department of Tourism and Marketing is doing incredible work, and they're generating a lot of revenue to the state, and this industry is generating a lot of revenue to the state. And so we would support an increase to their appropriation that reflects even a portion of that.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Veggie, kill the sunset.
Good job.
Second.
Kill the sunset on the veggie program.
We have that bill in.
We've got lots of rationale as to why, but we can talk about that later. Remove the sunset on that program. And then our last piece, and this is something we heard a lot from manufacturers, is automation in Vermont is not killing jobs, it's saving businesses, and it's growing better jobs for young people, as well as our SAGE workers who in the manufacturing floor may not be able to do the same level of manual labor that they had once been able to do, but they still have working years ahead of them. And automation can take some of that manual labor pressure off and help them upskill, stay part of the workforce, which while we're still trying to recruit young people, we need them to be part of the workforce as long as they're willing and able. So what we have here is a task force, a study, with a specific group of people to talk about what could an automation incentive program be to ensure that it's balanced in a way that is saying, how do we automate and not incentivize that sort of, we're going to automate and fire 75 people because we've automated, but the work to automate and bring the employees along or recognize that you're about to have massive retirements and you're either gonna have to leave or automate. This is something businesses are trying to do, but the access to capital, and the workforce upskilling are a challenge. So working on a state program that can meet that moment. We have some ideas here who can be part of a conversation like that. So you can come back next year with sort of a program specific to, put before you.
I think a program like that is important, but I think that program also has to take into account the very likelihood that there will be reductions in force.
Right.
And so part of that automation or that plan should be, what are you gonna do with the people you have left over? Don't leave them out.
Right, no, and these are the important and tricky questions that I think is why we're not saying, we can create a program in the next 3 months that's saying, let's get some smart people who can think about all these things to find where those guardrails are. And not, a full incentive grant, whatever you want to call it, is great, but I also think manufacturers are a little bit more open to debt. And so if this is a no interest loan, that can have a lot of attractiveness. It doesn't necessarily need to be a grant, but we have to get that.
We should, we will chat about this further, but automation is so interesting and specific to each manufacturing industry. It's access to capital is a difference. It's sort of.
Well, that's sort of what we're looking at, is that.
But I would say it's an access to capital question more than.
But that's veggie. It could be
But
veggie.
but veggie as it is now is driven by job growth. That makes the automation.
Oh, I see what you're
You
saying.
can have capital investment, but you have to have that job growth. And that is where the trick is right now, when job growth is really challenging. And so we're saving jobs by automating, and we've got some good examples of businesses that have
Hey, we were toured one together.
Yeah. All right.
At GW Plastics, which is now Nolato.
And there's a great picture of you all touring it together.
Oh, yeah, that was very interesting.
Yeah.
And very exciting, actually.
So that's that in a nutshell. And
Thank you.
thank you all, and thanks to Kevin for
Thank you, Kevin, for teeing it up. Thank you for thinking this out and segmenting your recommendations to the areas that we're going to be doing built in. And so this is great and more to follow on this. Tom, you want a closing question? Thank you.
Great.
This was great.
Thank you.
You have 1 minute. Talk about this.
The bill, that, okay, yeah.